Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Welcome to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Kelly Mescher Collins with the Diocese of Des Moines. On today's show, we're focusing on National Hospice and Palliative Care Month. Our guests today are Kayla Elman, Director of MercyOne Des Moines Home Hospice, and Becky Oliva, who is Director of Operations. But before we get to today's interview, let's find out what's on Bishop's mind.
Hi, Kelly. Good to be with you as we move into the month of November. And actually, we know we are recording the show because I get to be with the St. Albert Catholic School community today.
That's right.
And so celebrating Mass, right, even as we speak here, kind of anticipating the Feast of St. Albert. So that great saint and patron of science and all learning. And so just really delighting in that chance. But yeah, it's been a full month, a good month of grace. Some of the events that we've been celebrating are masses recognizing couples married with various signal anniversaries. 1 year, 10 years, 15, 25, 50, and 60. And so we started out on October 30th at St. Ambrose Cathedral in Des Moines. We had over 37 couples, and the Davisons were from married at Assumption Parish in Granger, 67 years.
Wow.
And then we were at St. Anne in Logan on November 6th. And then we'll be concluding tomorrow at St. Mary in Red Oak. So just a great chance to affirm those couples. And in a culture where people are getting married in churches much less frequently, the witness that they give, that this is ultimately a sacrament that Christ has instituted, not only for their own salvation, but the salvation of the world. So a great blessing that's there. We know lots of things going on in the political world. Our U.S. President Biden met last month with the Holy Father. Not quite sure exactly what took place in that meeting, different reports. And if you take the president at his different comments, they don't all seem to reconcile completely. So, but I think as we will be looking this coming week, I'll be participating in the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops meeting in Baltimore. And there's a full agenda. Probably the one that's gathering the most attention is the document on Eucharist and the Eucharistic renewal and the focus that it has. And we know it was somewhat controversial as it came out, but I think the draft as it's proposed is a very balanced document, very evangelical and very doctrinally sound, but also trying to appeal to us as it calls us all as Catholics to worship, to be transformed in holiness, and to be prophetic in our proclamation of the gospel as we love our neighbor and show our solidarity with the poor, our commitment to justice and the common good. And so, it was a concern that were certain politicians going to be signaled out. That is not the case, but it does address matters of Eucharistic worthiness and how each of us in our own way damage communion with God by our sins. And it falls in different categories. And there are different degrees to which we insult communion or even can break communion in that way, even rupturing it. So the church consistently teaching that a person who receives Holy Communion while in a state of mortal sin not only does not receive the grace of the sacrament, but shows a sacrilege by failing to reverence the body and blood of Christ. And so the ways in which then we want to continue to be drawing and agents of unity, to uphold the teaching. And so each time we say amen, I know God has a claim over us and is converting us each and every time we receive the Blessed Sacrament. So very powerful things. We'll see how the voting goes on all of this and what the comments and possible adjustments are in that document. But I think it's something just as we set the course to renew, the Eucharist over the next 3 years and our communion and our presence and practice centered in this most saving sacrament of our Lord. And, coming out of the pandemic, we know people still are exhibiting some caution, and we encourage them to be mindful of their physical health. We're not mandating that people you throw caution to the wind, but if they or someone under their care is vulnerable, to continue to know that they are permitted to exempt themselves in the Eucharist, but that the Eucharistic obligation is there for all of us. And so how might we continue to do this in this kind of what some have described as a kind of new exodus? Where is God leading us as a church? A positive wind of the Spirit. We don't want to be simply carrying something like Joseph's bones with us. We want the bread that is unleavened, but it will be leavened by the Spirit, which will continue to raise up the church as a body of witness, centered in our great love for the one who loves us unconditionally. He pours himself out for us in that miracle each and every time we celebrate the Mass.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen on Iowa Catholic Radio and the Spirit Catholic Radio Network.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Dowling Catholic Sports is provided in part by Ashworth Vision Clinic. With 2 licensed optometrists, Barbara Sheets, a Dowling graduate, and Dr. Craig Harper, the Ashworth Vision Clinic team provides complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. Ashworth Vision Clinic is located at 60th and Ashworth in West Des Moines. 515-440-4610 or online, ashworthvision.com.
What is the best gift ever? Giving a Catholic education is at the top of my list. Your contribution to CTO helps families send their children to our Catholic schools who otherwise could not afford it. In giving to CTO, you receive the best tax credits ever. Pledge or donate online at ctoiowa.org. The bottom line, it's for the kids and their future.
Welcome back. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. I'm Kelly Messer-Collins with the Diocese of Des Moines. On today's show, we're focusing on National Hospice and Palliative Care Month. Our guests today are Kayla Elman, Director of MercyOne Des Moines Home Hospice, and Becky Oliva, who's Director of Operations.
Hey, thanks for being on the show. This is a month where within the Catholic Church, we're kind of focusing on ultimate things in a special way. A few weeks ago, we were kind of talking about the art of dying and how the Catholic Christian tradition looks at that and both the human preparation, but also the spiritual preparation. So I think this flows very nicely into this recognition of National Hospice and Palliative Care Month. So just get to know you a little bit. The show's called Making It Personal. Could you just tell us a little bit about your respective backgrounds and how you came to be involved in hospice care? Maybe Kayla, if you'd go first.
Sure. My background has been in an array of places. I actually started out prior to hospice. I worked as a labor and delivery nurse, and then I just felt a calling to the hospice program here in Des Moines. The hospital that I was working at was a very small rural community, and so I had looked into hospice, but rurally there wasn't a lot going on, and so I came into the Des Moines area and started with hospice about 4 years ago, and as a case manager working in the field, and then most recently have taken the new position as Director of Clinical Services.
Beautiful, beautiful. And for you, Becky?
Well, I just started my 20th year with Mercy Home Health Services. I started here as a staff physical therapist. That's my background is physical therapy, and moved my way up through management. And my role now is the Area Director of Operations, in which I oversee the business management of MercyOne Home Care, MercyOne Home Hospice, and the MercyOne Johnston Hospice House. I also act as a liaison leader to the administration of the MercyOne hospitals and physician clinics, and I work on developing programs to meet the needs of our community.
Beautiful. So your focus is Central Iowa, or does it extend through the larger Mercy network?
Our focus is basically right here within the Des Moines Metro and 50-mile radius from our main hospital, downtown Mercy. Okay. Very good. Kayla, I'm kind of intrigued. You said you were working in labor and delivery. So you're kind of at the margins of the spectrum of human life there. You went from one end to the other.
Interesting enough, more people I talk to, the more I hear that a lot of hospice nurses do start out in labor and delivery and then come to the hospice field.
And any suggestion why that dynamic is in place, or just the fragility of life, the vulnerability of life, perhaps? Or
I think it really stems from the vulnerability. In both places, you're in such an intimate part of a person's life. And so I think it just really depends on where you're at in your life and what your calling is at that time.
Mm-hmm. And so the kind of a discernment, a vocational discernment almost, if you will. We kind of use that language in the Catholic circles. So is there a sense for you and for the people that you collaborate with of a kind of life calling, whether it's seen as religious or not, that something here that has larger meaning and purpose? And maybe we'll go back to you, Becky.
Hospice is such sacred work, and not everybody in the healthcare arena is set to be in the hospice area. I feel like it's a privilege for us to travel the end of life journey with our hospice patients. And end of life should be a celebration with planning, just as the birth of a child. So maybe that is where we see the labor and delivery nurses become hospice nurses later in life, because it's really a privilege to walk along the patient and their families as they travel that end of life journey.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, and to accompany them and to be present, it's a holy ground for many of us who've been able to be at the bedside and certainly witness the work of hospice staff and personnel, including social workers and others too. You know, we speak in the Catholic Church of the birthday of the martyrs is the day they die, and that they believe and they enter into the fullness of life. And so, you know, that sense of birth as a kind of overarching theme that we might carry forward as well. There are multiple hospice opportunities in the Des Moines area, different organizations, different firms that supply that. How would you characterize the MercyOne home hospice ethic? What does that might distinguish it from other hospices? And either one of you would like to take that on.
You know, all of our hospices in the region, no matter who they are, our goal is to care for that patient. I think that something that distinguishes us is just being part of the Catholic Health Initiative and the spiritual and religious background of our hospital. So
that mission centric to kind of creates a culture and an atmosphere of, you know, how life is valued and the dignity of all persons that might be present. If I'm not, you know, imposing something on you that's different. Yeah. So, so speaking about that, the families that are involved and, you know, the home opportunities to be in that privileged environment, the intimacy of that, perhaps less institutional. How is this, you know, kind of bringing conversations and maybe even prior to that question, for families to each actually arrive at the place that they would consider hospice care, which, you know, is then an acknowledgement of the finality of life and that there's likely no possible therapeutic solution to restore that person to a normal life. How is that broaching those topics?
You know, those conversations are always difficult. Of course, they're conversations that have to be done. So me personally, when I'm in the field talking to patients and families about what hospice is and how we can best support them, I try to get a sense of where they're at in their journey, because you don't want to just jump in and cold-heartedly start talking about something that they're not comfortable with. And so I like to meet them where they're at and then gradually build that relationship with that family. When we take on a patient, it's not just the patient, it's a unit, it's their entire family. It's their mom, their dad, their children, their brothers, their sisters. We as a hospice team are there to support all of them. And so our team really works together to try to be on the same page with the family and walk through their journey alongside them and meet them where they're at.
And the individual family members are not all at the same place, right? I mean, the people may be coming to different terms of acceptance or even able to name what the dynamic is.
Exactly. And so a lot of times we do work with people individually. We do have bereavement services that we can offer pre-bereavement to help with understanding more of what's going on in that patient's life. Us as nurses, social workers, our chaplain, we try to work with those individuals individually instead of as a group, as a whole. Sometimes we might just do visits just with that person. So that because if you're in a group, sometimes you don't hear everything. And so if we do it individually, a visit with them individually, they might hear what we're saying a little differently.
Okay. So, but obviously then that's a commitment, because that's a more labor intensive approach to relating to individuals and honoring, you know, their own particular spiritual state and where they are. I guess, you know, my background a little bit working, and being involved on a board as a board member of a hospice in Northeast Iowa. Is there a sense that sometimes the conversation doesn't get started until, you know, when a person might have benefited from hospice care, you know, days, weeks, months, even in advance of when you're actually privileged to start that conversation?
Absolutely. and it happens more often than we'd like. Hospice, the vision of hospice has changed in the recent years, and we like to bring our patients on a lot sooner than the last couple weeks of life or last days of life. We would like to have our patients on service a lot longer so that we get to know them and their family members. Currently, we work with our home care team to identify patients who may benefit from hospice. And so we have what's called goals of care. And we start talking about hospice, what your goals are ahead of the transition over to hospice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in hospice, a person's not necessarily actively dying. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had patients on service for 18 months. It's just really depending on what your disease progression is, what your disease is. Some diseases are fast acting and some diseases are prolonging. So it really just depends on you and what your purpose is. I always tell patients, because the golden question patients always ask me, when am I going to die? And I always tell them, when your purpose is served, the Lord will call you home. And so it really just depends on who you are. You don't have to be actively dying to be on hospice services. Okay.
And Becky, maybe just as an administrator there, is this something then that, it challenges the hospice? So something in my mind thinks that third-party payment, especially with government, Medicare and others, that they look at the 6-month period as kind of a margin or horizon for support on that front. Is that correct? Or maybe you need to set me straight.
Well, for somebody to receive hospice care, they have to be eligible for hospice care. And then if we can continue to show through their course of treatment, like Kayla said, we have people that could be on hospice for 18 months, but they're continuing to show a decline. That still continues to make them hospice eligible. The biggest thing that we kind of have to really stand on the rooftops and shout out is hospice doesn't mean that you're going to die tomorrow. Hospice means you're going to get some really great quality of life care, and not only the patient, but the whole family is. And that is our biggest thing that we really have to educate the community about, is hospice doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be gone in a week.
Yeah, that ominous sense, that this is a death sentence in that way, that we need to dispel that, and so that the person is treated in a way that, there's a medical dimension to it, but it's a different modality, as I understand, that would be offered to them in this way. Kayla, you'd mentioned the spiritual. Is that some of the discernment that has to go in, terms of what are the person's faith commitments or not? Is this person even comfortable with speaking of God or seeing their life as somehow, ordered to or related to God? Does that bring in new wrinkles of the interactions?
Just like I said earlier, you have to meet the patients and families where they are. So I always try to gauge that where they are in their spiritual journey. I don't say that to everyone, but if I do know that they have a religious belief, I typically do say that saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Has there been a learning curve for hospice personnel in terms of what certain traditions and Iowa, predominantly Christian, but we're seeing more and more Muslim members, Jewish members, Hindu or other faiths. Has that something that you've been privileged to encounter in your work?
Yeah, we don't encounter it very often, but when we do, the families have been wonderful. For instance, if we had a Hindu family, that's not something that we're well versed in. We do have a spiritual coordinator, Anne, who is absolutely wonderful. We as a hospice team will research what we can do for those families, but most importantly, we ask them what we can do for them and how we can best support them with their religion. And families are very open. They're actually very thankful that we're asking those questions. We have some that have spiritual rituals after the patient's passing. And so those are things that we need to know ahead of time before going into a patient's death, so that we can honor their wishes and honor their spiritual routines.
Okay. And
our chaplain, Anne, has a network of spiritual leaders from a variety of religious backgrounds that she is able to contact to meet the specific needs of our patients as well.
Tremendous. So that's part of respecting the dignity of persons is their freedom of faith and conscience, and and if people have a strong relationship with an area pastor or imam or anything, is that allowed then to be realized in that relationship in the hospice care, or is there a preference to have somebody working from your side of it?
No, absolutely not. If they have a preference of using their own leader, we encourage that. We do say that if they need something from us, we're here. I always say we can add and take away at any point. So if you need Anne to come, Anne can always come. But if their preference is to have their leader come into their home, then we respect that.
Okay. And are there any extended therapeutic care or things that have a spiritual side, maybe not organized religion, music therapy or other kinds of things, art or other things that might be provided to the patients?
Yeah, our hospice has a full-time music therapist. And so I would probably say about 75% of our patients do receive music therapy. It's their choice if they want that. It's always offered. But it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes you have to approach it in a different aspect of why it's important. And then once you explain that to the patients, then they're open to that music therapist to come in.
Yeah, this isn't karaoke. This is true therapy.
Exactly. Because a lot of times when you start talking about a music therapist, they'll say, "I don't know how to sing. I'm not singing along." And then you really have to talk to them about what the benefit and the importance of that therapist is. Once they realize
not
that
open mic,
they're usually open to it.
Well, that's a lighter note and a good segue to a little break here, and hopefully we'll stay back. Easy and I are talking very serious matters.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry, including the St. Sarah Club of Des Moines and the Sarah Club of Council Bluffs. Sarah is an apostolate of the Worldwide Catholic Church dedicated to fostering and supporting priesthood and religious vocations. Sarahans strive to accomplish their mission through prayer, fellowship, and service to the bishop, priests, sisters, and all in religious formation, and in doing so to increase their own holiness. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org. Thank you, Sarahans, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Savage Power.
At Intervisions Healthcare, we see patients with unplanned pregnancies from ages 12 to 43. An unplanned pregnancy is traumatic at any age. For that reason, we specialize in educating, encouraging, and empowering vulnerable and at-risk mothers facing an unexpected pregnancy with the medical information and services necessary for them to make an informed decision. For more information on the free medical services at Intervisions Healthcare or to support our mission or become a volunteer, visit ivhcare.org.
Welcome back to Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. We are back with Kayla Elman, Director of MercyOne Des Moines Home Hospice, and Becky Oliva, Director of Operations.
Thanks for remaining with us, and we had a kind of a light note there, and no, I don't know what music or ads we're playing during the break, but we'll check that out. COVID, obviously, impact and all levels of society. A lot of elective procedures went on hold for extended periods. Some would see hospice as elective, but how did this impact your roles?
Well, from an administrative standpoint, it was very scary when we all started out. We had to do extensive teaching regarding COVID and the use of PPE when they get in the homes, continue to do daily monitoring of our staff, and then asking our patients and families before we even enter the home, a lot of pre-COVID monitoring questions. Mm-hmm. We, as a company, have been able to institute some really unique things to help us be able to reach out and see our patients. One of those being remote technology to be able to remote in to see the patient and the family when necessary. We also worked very hard with just keeping everybody safe, and it's taken a toll on our staff. It's taken a toll on healthcare itself. We've really tried to wrap our arms closely around our staff so they know that they're supported provided them with little extra goodies here and there, lots of emails, lots of Zoom meetings, lots of shoulders to lean on during this time. And I'd say our staff's been pretty darn resilient through this whole thing.
So able to sustain your team pretty much, or higher turnover than normal at this time?
We've had our share of turnover, just like everyone else in healthcare. And we always try to, figure out if there's an underlying common theme. And I just think that there's a certain amount of molting that happens in any work area. But people are tired. The healthcare workers are tired, and we are doing the best we can to support them, to give them what they need emotionally and physically to continue this, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Amen. Amen. We've got just a couple minutes left, and this is a question that maybe wasn't you could have anticipated. So I'm kind of taking one, and hopefully it's not a drive-by here question, but we speak of National Hospice and Palliative Care Month. For our listeners, could you just distinguish? I mean, they are companion pieces, but the distinctiveness of palliative care and what that means. Kayla, maybe that'd be a question for you. Sorry.
Yeah,
you're so respectful of each other.
Interesting enough, I have just sent an article to one of our social workers to help her determine this. So with palliative care, patients continue their symptom management. They meet with their palliative care team pretty frequently in their palliative care clinics. They may be doing palliative radiation, palliative chemotherapy. And on the hospice side, we're keeping our patients comfortable. There's no other option for them. At times we do some palliative radiation for pain relief, but typically we're not doing life saving treatments for those patients. We're keeping them comfortable through that. And with hospice, we're in the patient's home, so they don't have to leave their home anymore. We're that liaison between them and their physician. So if they're having trouble at home with some extreme pain, we're calling the doctor for them. They're not going into the hospital or a clinic. We would rather them spend the last days doing what they love to do versus something that they have to do. So if they want to go for a ride in their car, we just had a patient who went down to his family farm. He would rather do that than go to the doctor's office for pain management. So
both are aimed at relief of pain, but different levels of intensity and intentionality of how one goes about that, whether it's more pronounced therapeutic intervention. Well, this has been beautiful. Unfortunately, we're running out of time today. This is, as you said when we began, sacred work. It is work that is both humanly blessing the people that are there, but God's a mantle of love and care expressed through you. And so thank you for the work that you do to build up our community, and blessings on you, not just in the month of November.
All right. This has been another edition of Making It Personal with Bishop Joensen. Thank you to our guests and all our listeners in Iowa, Nebraska, and Wisconsin.
You can hear Making It Personal with Bishop William Joensen every week on Iowa Catholic Radio and iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and Making It Personal is provided by Sarah Vocations Ministry. Learn more at joinserra.org.